All right, hello once again. Jeff Scott of Rankin Technical College, and as part of the Rankin Technical College AWD 1000 or Web Development Technologies course, I have been creating a series of video presentations based off the Mozilla Developer Network Learn Web Development series. I'm in the JavaScript portion, and we're in first steps talking about arrays. So when you look here, from the first steps, we've gone through the overview. What is JavaScript? The first splash into JavaScript. What went wrong? Troubleshooting JavaScript. Storing the information you need, variables. Basic math in JavaScript, numbers and operators. Handling text in JavaScript, or handling text, strings in JavaScript rather. And useful string methods. So we've got left in this section, arrays and the assessment. Now with arrays, this is the way I usually explain them. And I don't know if this is a good thing or a bad thing, but I'm going to show it to you like this anyway. And that is, I'm going to move down a little and I'm going to do this. Now, when I moved to Missouri about 7 years ago, I lived in an apartment for the first 2 years while I was here. Okay? And when I did, it was an 8-family unit. All right, so why am I telling you this? Well, so let's imagine we had the 8 mailboxes, okay? Didn't space them out really the way I wanted to, but you get the idea, or at least I hope you get the idea. That'll work like that. That should work. 8. All right. Oh, that was interesting. I don't want that. So, if you can imagine, and it was not my address, but let's just say I lived at 123 Main Street. All right. So if I live there and I happen to be in apartment number 1, you would think that if somebody wanted to send something and make sure that it got there, let's say that I was in Wentzville, so we would put 123 Main Street, apartment number 1, Wentzville, Missouri, 63385. Okay? And you would think, at least, that this would get to me. All right? I would think it would. Now, what happens if somebody just types 123 Main Street? But if they put my name on there, technically what's held in here, so let's say that in here it says Scott. All right, and let's say that in here it says brown. And in here it says green. I'm just using colors here, but you get the idea. Here it says black. Here it says gray. Here, let's just say it says Jones. I don't know, I'm just making these up. You get the idea, hopefully. Here it says Smith. And here it says, I don't know, Keller. Carey. Oh, that's fine. All right. So if somebody says Jeff Scott and they don't put it in there, well, if this is the mail slot right here, and let's try to make it look halfway decent. And the male person, let's say it's a brand new male person. They've never gone and done this apartment before. All right, so they put in all of this stuff. Oops. And somebody sends something out to Jeff Scott. Well, they probably will look in here and say, oh, Scott, it must be apartment 1. And they'll probably deliver it to the right apartment. What if somebody does this? What if they say Mary Brown, and then afterwards they put apartment number 1? It could go into here, or it could go into here. I'm not sure which one it'll go into. Now, I will tell you that where I live, in Lake St. Louis, Illinois, or Missouri rather, that I didn't know this when I bought it, but the house that I live in was a rental house. And I'm constantly getting stuff with a John Smith followed by my address, etc. And we get it even though we've lived in the house for 3 years. Doesn't matter. Now, so what does this have to do with anything? Well, if you can imagine that I had a 0 here, so if we started counting at 0, which you oftentimes do with computer stuff, and let's say that I came in here and I created something and I called it renters. So I'm going to say renters, not renters, renters equal, and I'm going to put in brackets here, Scott, Brown, green, black, gray, Jones, Smith. Let's change this name. Let's just call it R, so we can, hopefully this will all fit in here. R and Carey. I can do that. Bracket, semicolon. Let me make this a little smaller. There you go. Semicolon. That's one way to create an array. Now, let's say that I didn't want to do it like that. Let's say that I just came in here and, so I'm showing you the completed product, so to speak. So let's just say I said R equals bracket, bracket. Now I've got an empty array. So now I'm going to have to come in here and do this. I'm going to have to say R0 equals Scott. R1 equals Brown. I'm not going to keep going because hopefully you get the idea. Now, one thing that makes JavaScript unique from most other programming languages is in most other programming languages, if that's a string, these must all be strings. All right, but I could do something like this. I could say G equals, and I could have in here, for example, Scott, 96, true, and then some kind of a date. Today's date. 05-20-2021. I could do something like that. So I can mix data types in here. All right. So an array is just described, it's a list-like object. It holds lists. So here's theirs, where they've got a shopping list. Here they've got a sequence of numbers. Totally fine both ways. Now, let's suppose, going back to the example we had here, all right, I moved out now. I bought a house. And somebody named, I don't know, White moves in. So I can come in here now and I can say R0, which formerly held Scott, and I can say it now holds White. So I can change the values in an array at any time. And that's what they're talking about here. If you've got an array within an array, that's called a multi-dimensional array. So this array would have 2 rows. This would be row 0 and column 0. I'm sorry, row 0 and row 1. and it has two columns, column 0 and column 1. You can always tell how many elements are in a multi-dimensional array by multiplying. 2 times 2, so there's 4 elements in there. You can have arrays of as many dimensions as you want. Typically, you wouldn't do more than a 3-dimensional array because it's kind of hard to create an array where you can't fathom what it would actually look like. To find the length of the array, it's the name of the array, dot length. So in other words, if right in the example that I gave you, if it doesn't matter if I did it before or afterwards, if I said r dot length, and I assign that to a variable, so if I say len equals r dot length, it would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It would be 8. It doesn't matter that it goes from 0 to 7. There are still 8 elements, regardless of how you add those. All right. Here's a way that you can loop through an array, and arrays work fantastically with for loops because for loops are counting loops. You need to know how many times you're going through it. So they work really well with arrays. All right, I'm going to stop right here, even though it's early, and I'm going to go through the useful array methods, and I'm going to do that in the next